what this is actually about has already played itself out in my case, and I already explained that to you. I would say a legal doctrine is something like a virus, and it has a life.
That's not what we think.
If you let it go into a living system, it propagates and it has effects, and the effects are a consequence of the philosophy that's embedded inside the law. And if you really want to know about this, you should read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, because what he does in that book is tell you how the hypothetically humane doctrines that were embedded in radical Marxism at the end of the 1800s unfolded into Soviet society and demolished it. But I want to tell you a little bit about what the law does. And this is with regards to its interpretation from the policy guidelines. It instantiates social constructionism into our legal system. You have to understand what that means. There's a huge debate about how human identity is upon what grounds human identity is predicated. Now, the radical social constructionists basically say that identity is nothing but a social construction, and that's in keeping with their philosophical doctrines, partly Marxist and partly postmodern. But that isn't, and that was what I was objecting to with regards to Bill C-16, because it insists, do you understand this? It makes this legal doctrine that biological sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation vary independently. And they don't. Now, the reason they don't is because 98% of people, it's 99.7% of people, by the way, at least with regards to the most credible statistics, have a gender identity that's essentially identical with their biological sex. And almost everybody who is male and female by biological sex and gender identity dresses that way, and that's what gender expression essentially is. And then if you stack those three things on top of each other, they're basically isomorphic. You can add sexual orientation to that, and 98% of people are heterosexual. So the idea that those things vary independently is absolutely preposterous. But it's written into the law, and that has terrible consequences. You see, I don't know, for example, now, to what degree any discussion in universities of the biological differences between men and women are legal. And you think, oh, well, that's an exaggeration. It's like, well, I debated Nicholas Matt, I believe that was his name, a professor at the University of Toronto on TVO's The Agenda, and he said right out for everyone to hear that the scientific consensus is that there's no biological differences between men and women. And I've received letters from people who've told me that now the social justice activist types are complaining about the fact that the biologists assign biological sex to animals because it's only a social construct that we're projecting onto their being. And you know, we just heard that the chromosomal level of analysis is complex. It's not that complex. What we have is a bimodal distribution with a tiny number of exceptions, and that, by the way, is not a spectrum.